vuela con la guaira, limpia, limpia, taita, vibrando con la hualca.
In this episode of ayahuascapodcast.com, we talk to Simon Tennant. We touch upon subjects of masculinity and femininity during the retreat, the balance of that. We talk about collective unconscious. We talk about archetypes in the group and Simon's experience as a psychotherapist working with the victims. What effect can psychedelics have on therapy world, and so much more. I'm sure you will enjoy this podcast. Hi guys, you're listening to ayahuascapodcast.com. As always with you, host Sam Believ, the founder of the podcast and of La Guaira Ayahuasca Retreat. Today we're joined by Simon. Simon has just spent 18 days here with us at La Guaira and had a very interesting experience. Simon is a psychiatrist. Psychotherapist. Yeah. He is a tango dancer, horse rider. He's so many things. He's one of those, the most interesting people you've ever met kind of guy. So Simon, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Sam.
So, first of all, Simon, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up finding about ayahuasca?
So, I am someone that's always been a seeker of knowledge and always, I think from an early age, I saw my mother helping people, and it's just something I wanted to do. And so in my early 20s, I switched from IT into health, and it's just been an adult long journey with working with health, from natural medicines and kinesiology to counselling and psychotherapy. And I think when I was a homeopath, I realised that the challenge that I had in my life, and I saw in my clients' life, was the relationship they had with themselves and with others. And so that really made me want to understand the psyche more, and so I went into psychotherapy. And doing my training, there was this transpersonal, a psychospiritual psychology, so it very much held transpersonal and spiritual realms. And in doing that, I started to read Stan Groff's work on the way of the psychonaut, and that got me super interested in how psychedelic assisted therapies could really be an agent of transformative change in people's lives. And I'd never done psychedelics in my life, and then one day I just woke up and was like, I've got to do ayahuasca. So I contacted you. We exchanged about 3 lines of text through an email, and I was sold. I just felt a real pull.
I'm very short in my replies, but somehow still it was enough. Why did you decide to do it in Colombia?
Again, I'm not sure. I just came across your site, and there was a price point, of course, which I really appreciated, because coming from New Zealand, it's a way to get here. There was something in the just the way you wrote the reply. It just felt, I just let my intuition do the choosing for me.
Nice. I'm glad you came.
Me too.
So you said you were going to write a paper on change states of consciousness, or get an education in that direction?
So I'm looking at starting a PhD, master's PhD program in September on, it was in non-ordinary states of consciousness, and what is it about these non-ordinary states, whether it's through holotropic breath work or psychedelics or tantric work, that is kind of an agent for transformative change, that these altered states or non-ordinary states, which we might even say are possibly normal states that we've just disconnected from, create this deep-seated change that someone can come to ayahuasca for a week and be like it's 5 years of therapy or 10 years. And that just has always fascinated me.
So after your own experience now with psychedelics, maybe did you learn something new? Are you more inspired about the topic or less?
I think my smile says it all. My time here at Lawara has been exquisitely profound. It's had beauty and pain and the secrets of the cosmos unveiled, as well as deep connection with new people. I've met people here who I've been in the ceremonies with for 18 days, and I feel more connected to them than maybe some people that have been in my life for 30 years. So the experience has been profound. It's been humbling to have your ego dissolved in front of your eyes and be humbled and at the mercy of the medicine working through you, and the music and just the caring of your staff, of your volunteers, of yourself, of Taira Fernando. It's an incredibly full and life-changing experience. Yeah.
Through the word circles that we shared, just for those who are listening, don't get intimidated. 18 days doesn't mean 18 ceremonies. It's actually just 10 ceremonies. So we shared some time together. Mm-hmm. And I recall you describing couple experiences. I think it was one of the first day ceremonies that was very profound. And I think I can recall one more, maybe another day ceremony. Day ceremony seems to be your favorite thing.
Wow.
So can you pretend we're in a word circle now and tell that story again, if you can still recall it?
Yeah, what I'm grateful for is that both of those day ceremony experiences are incredibly vivid and still really alive, and I'm still in the process of yesterday's ceremony. So if I can do my best to put what is experiential into words, my consciousness went from a particle experience of being in this body to being in multiple spaces at the same time and being super conscious to a lot of experience happening on. So at one stage I was inside Taira Fernando's flute being breathed. I was also the inside of the drum being beaten at the same time, as well as like the networks of relationships that form the fabric of reality forming in front of me, being inside it but also seeing it from a distance at the same time. I almost felt like creation was using my body to experience and know itself more intimately. It was incredibly profound. I hope that you can see in my eyes that the words are difficult for me to find, because it was so huge. And to then just have this profound clarity of different philosophical views of the ages, whether it was Buddhism or Neo-Confucianism or Taoism, kind of come together in these synergistic spaces and see them from the inside and the outside is incredibly profound and life-changing.
Yeah, that's the problem with psychedelic experiences. They are so profound that the words just don't do it justice, no matter how eloquent you are. And trust me, this is one of the most eloquent people I've been in presence of. Like, you would daily use words I've never heard before, which is a compliment to you, not to me. But it's words is not enough. What you described kind of made me recall this, movie Lucy, where this lady, she consumes some kind of blue thing, and she goes from using 10% of her brain to using 100%, and it's kind of like, I know this is not a correct thing. Apparently, it's not like we're not using 100% of our brain. We are. It's just not. But it does feel like your consciousness went to like super consciousness mode, where you could be so much more conscious, meaning you could experience more at the same amount of time, which is fascinating. So I don't know, maybe you have a theory behind it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated too, because in the word circle, people were reflecting back to me that they felt me also in their experiences and their journeys. So that field experience of consciousness, when we go from body to the field, allows our consciousness to be in these multiple states at one time, but also feeling inner peace and like a solidness and centeredness. is what I noticed. So while it was an incredibly full experience, it was also incredibly peaceful. Look, there's lots of different philosophies that would try to bring understanding to that. But one of the ways I look at it is fundamentally we're networks of relationships. If we were to take a camera and go inside an electron, we wouldn't video anything. It's a condensation of energy that has spin, and these, as Fitjof Capra would say in his book, Systems View of Life, this network of relationships is kind of like this fundamental fabric of reality, and depending on your magnification, it would be like a cartoonist scribbling, and when you zoom back, he's drawn a person's face, but when you zoom right in, there's these kind of scribbled fractals. You don't see the face, you see the intricacies of how that face is made up. I hope that brings some light to that. It's a difficult thing to express and put into words. I'm still finding the words myself.
You describe like interpersonal relationships, and obviously there is a group dynamic that happens during the retreat when it becomes obvious that we are pretty much connected, and there is processes that sometimes are being experienced by several people at the same time. You mentioned something about Carl Jung and his what's the unconscious
unconscious process, and
like group unconscious or collective unconscious.
Yeah.
So what have you observed about that? Like, or maybe you have some smart words about the topic.
I really like Jung. I love the way in which he was a real avatar in searching new lands, and I think one of the things I said there is that when we don't take up the invitation to journey into the underworld of our inner world, then all that's unresolved in there, and it's like a heroic journey to go into that underworld, and that heroic journey is in so many of our different cultural motifs and myths, from Greeks to Aztecs to wherever you want to look. When we don't take up that opportunity, that gets projected to the outer world, and our outer world becomes an underworld, and then we live in the projections of others' underworlds, and that's what we live in today, is this underworld of unresolved trauma, of isolation, of fear, and it's incredibly restricting to people. But in the group dynamic, what we notice is that in the sharing circles, when people allow themselves to be seen, and they allow themselves to be vulnerable, and that's held in a loving and kind space by the team, yourself, and by the rest of us, we allow ourselves to be found in the world. We allow that vulnerability that's inherently there, and something we've locked away for so long, because it's usually the place in which we got hurt in the first place. But when that's allowed to be seen, that's courage, and courage to heart is to courage is to stand in the face of difficulty with heart, and that's what happens in these word circles. And so this collective experience comes alive, in which people are being seen and being felt, and there's a group energy, and you would have felt that too, that really arises in that space where vulnerability is really present.
Yeah, the vulnerability is the secret missing ingredient, I believe, in our society today, because it's only when both sides are vulnerable the real connection can take place. And I think this is what the culture we try and create here at Lawira, and also the medicine aids in that eventually the masks fall off, and two real people can then start to interact and have a beautiful healing journey together, because people can heal people, but there needs to be a connection. So you heal people, you work with people, you work with sexual abuse victims, if I'm not mistaken, as a psychotherapist. Would you bring them to ayahuasca?
I actually have been philosophizing and doing some pondering on sexual trauma and how I feel like ayahuasca, of any of the plant-based medicines I've had a look into, not that I've experienced, I want to make that very clear, I've only ever experienced ayahuasca, is that sexual abuse is forced upon people. It's forced in and onto the body, and with force and with violence. And there is something about the embodied felt experience of ayahuasca. Like, ayahuasca is not just a pretty colours and pretty pictures experience, it's a profoundly embodying felt experience. And I hope that you can feel what I'm saying by this, that it's, for me, it was very embodied. And so because it's embodied, ayahuasca, through its purgative experience, through vomiting or through pooing, through bottom evacuating, has a lot of force in it. I can speak to experience with that. That force almost matches the force that the trauma was taken into the body, and the force of ayahuasca allows it to be forced out of the body. Trauma is stored fragmentally in the body, and so no amount of just talking about it is going to get out. There's no free lunch with it, is what I like to see. It needs to be felt. And I feel that ayahuasca provides a wonderful container and method for that trauma to come out. And because what you do here at La Waira, with the word circles, the community that's here, with Taira Fernando, the music, there's a beautiful coming together of the feminine and the masculine, the feminine of ayahuasca, the opening and the depth of the feminine, the nurturing, but also the holding. And then you've got this kind of gentle, penetrative energy of the masculine coming in and almost infusing that in more with the music. And I feel that for sexual trauma is also incredibly important.
Yeah, in our previous podcast, you met Ashley. She talks about her trauma with men and how here at this space, because she could see so many men being vulnerable and she could also feel being healed by men, it really helped her to overcome, or at least progress with that trauma and feel better about men in general. A tricky question, you know, as a psychotherapist, and a lot of psychotherapists, they spend years and years working with people, trying to get some results, and sometimes it's not really that effective. On the one side, I can see some psychotherapists getting very excited about that they can finally speed up the process or finally see the visible change, get this dopamine boost. Like, here I am, and here's this person, here's him, before and after, kind of like we get here. It's a really quick result. But I'm sure there are some that are questioning it and they think, like, what if this is 10 years of money being made, what if I can do it in 1 week all of a sudden? Like, as a psychotherapist, are you worried that maybe psychedelics will steal your job?
Look, if I wanted to make money, I would have stayed in IT. My job as a psychotherapist, and I hope I speak for a few of them out there, and I can imagine I am, that it's more of a calling to be of service, to provide a space where we can help those that are really struggling in the world, our brothers and sisters. And on a side note here, what I love about Buddhism is they speak about everyone being our brother or sister, because in a past life maybe they were. And what you feel here at La Waira through the process is that we're all brothers and sisters here. So getting back to the psychotherapy, if we can't do all in our power to use this beautiful medicine or medicines to help open up these portals of healing, then we are not being psychotherapists. I think it's incredibly, I feel deeply into my bones that it's so exciting, ayahuasca, psilocybin, NDMA, these therapies, to help unlock what takes years to do in therapy. Dick Schwartz, who's the founder of Internal Family Systems, talks about psychedelics being able to create a discourse between the exiled, traumatized part and the soul. It takes the managerial parts, the ego away. And you don't have to look at people like Bessel van der Kolk, Dick Schwartz, Gabor Mate, these world leaders in their fields in psychology, really being huge advocates for psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So when leaders in the field are talking about this too, then we all need to be.
The names you just mentioned, they are on my dream list to interview for this podcast. So if you're listening, reach out. Gabor Mate, I'm a big fan.
Me too.
Bessel van der Kolk is Body Keeps the Score. I recommend this book to any woman that ever mentions physical abuse, and men as well. So, yeah, as they say, if you can't beat them, join them. So if you are a psychotherapist listening to that, and you are maybe part of you worried about the future job scenario, start learning about psychedelics, because what I believe will happen, it's kind of like, when they invent a new technology like a weaving machine, and all of a sudden you need less weavers, but you need more machine operators, and then you make more money and make more sweaters. So it's the same way right now. What's the percentage of people do you think that are actually taking therapy?
That's really hard to say. In New Zealand, I predominantly work with ACC claims, so I know there's about 6 months to a year wait to get into a ACC registered therapist or counsellor. We know that mental health difficulties are epidemic. We only need to look at the amount, especially in the States, of how many are on SSRIs or antidepressants and psychotropic medication. So there's not enough therapists to go around. There's a shortage. The thing is that where I see psychotherapists being of real value in the psychedelic-assisted therapies is the integration part. Like, we have these profound transformative experiences, and the music and the sham and the taita, they hold that beautifully. But when you have these transcendent, these really full spaces, it's like, how do we descend? How do we take the transcendent experience and descend it and ground it in the body? And that's where psychotherapists, I feel, could be of super helpers, of that integration being really part of helping with the dreams analysis, with the imagery, with the feelings that are arisen, and how to make meaning of all that, and use it to create purpose and meaning and values in one's life. So I feel like we've got a super important job. It's just it changes a bit. We're not the primary agent of the change. And in the relationships, like in psychotherapy, the relationship, us being able to feel into the, if you were a client of mine, me sitting in your sand particles and them landing on my body and feeling into what does it feel like to feel into Sam, and notice what comes arise in me and be alive to the unconscious process. Psychedelics just allows us to do that a lot quicker, a lot quicker. But the relational component's still important, but we're also getting that in the group component. But with the intimacy of psychotherapy, we can just enhance the process. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm completely not against psychotherapy. I think it's an awesome tool, and I believe if let's say psychotherapy is like digging a trench, then adding ayahuasca to it, it's like you just got yourself an excavator. So it's like, but you still need somebody to do the work. And it's like, we try our best to help people integrate, but I'm not a professional in this field. Some of our volunteers know more about that, so we have created a vessel and a container. I'm looking forward to you coming in, joining us as an integration coach.
I would love that.
Maybe in the future, because that's on my plan to have one person in a team like that. But if you are doing psychotherapy, so I like my analogies. I live in analogies. So the way I see mental work or inner work is like digging a tunnel. Psychotherapy is like having a pickaxe,
Yep.
and you go at it, and you're slowly going in, and you're doing the progress, but it's very slow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's organized because you can make a very organized tunnel.
Yeah.
Psychedelics is like dynamite. So if you put some dynamite, your progress will be so much quicker. But the integration is taking the rubble and cleaning it out. Because if you just keep blowing a piece of dynamite after another, it's just mess.
It's just dust.
Yeah. So I believe there's this beautiful balance that will be established eventually, where not only psychotherapists and psychologists and psychiatrists will be able to do their work better, but because people will get results quicker, then it will spread more. So the reason I ask you about how many people you think have done therapy is because I assume it's a very small amount.
It is a very small
Maybe 5 to 10% of population, if we're lucky.
I would say those would be really overestimates. So yeah, probably 5%.
So let's say hypothetically it's 5%, but how many people need it? We know 30% of people in the West are on some medications, which means at least 30. But if we're really honest, and we don't talk about pathologies and like really bad cases, and we talk about just general well-being, maybe more than half of people, if not everyone, would need it, at least some kind of realignment. So if the psychedelics would come into that space, make the professionals more effective, then I believe what would happen is then their friends would be like, yeah, I'll give it a try, because it's no longer committing for 10 years of therapy with little result to now being, it's going to be 1 month, and I know that I'll be just like my friend, I'll be so much happier. So I'm very excited about bringing more psychotherapists in the field, and hopefully even having some of them join our team. We do have a counselor on the team. He does remote integration coaching, and it helps a lot of people who want to go deeper. And but if we could have somebody in the presence, just like I noticed you did a little session there.
Yeah.
Nobody asked you to, but it's great because obviously it comes up naturally. So yeah, I'm excited about the emergence of these two fields as soon as we can let go of those, how would you say? Constructs and also fears, because the thing that I mentioned about therapists, I'm sure it comes to mind, and some people are like, I'm not sure about it, because like when self-interest is involved, it's a little tricky, and it's.
I think the self-interest things are something that comes up for me now in our sharing circles and through my own journey. In Buddhism, they say we don't have an independent self. That doesn't exist. That the arising of us being is dependent on causative factors, and so when we exist in these communities and our existence is dependent upon others and upon nature, then our context expands. Nietzsche said it best when he said, the death of God would have profound impact on 20th century humans as they moved their meaning-making context from a spiritual to a personal, and that's what we have today. We have people experiencing massive amounts of loneliness. They may be in a room full of people with their family and they still feel super alone. It gives rise to this free-floating anxiety around, what's wrong with me. They may challenge their own identity, their sexuality, all sorts of things. There's this confusion. And maybe what's speaking to there is the disconnection and the existential loneliness is there, the connection to something larger than yourself. And it's paradoxical because we see those connections to something larger than ourselves and war veterans that have been a part of a platoon and they would die for their brothers. We see it in Buddhists that get the joy and the suffering of being there and helping the suffering of others. And so something like ayahuasca also brings in those other transpersonal contexts of finding your place in the cosmos, finding your place with people, and having something that's greater than yourself. And I feel that's a super important part of this process here.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic of like loneliness because I think that it's a big problem right now. And what we do here, we try and address both connection to the group and also connection to the higher
Yeah.
whatever it is for you. And basically, this is why people are so full and so connected when they live here, because they felt what they haven't felt for a long time. But to a larger extent in the future, as you know, and some listeners might have already heard about it, our plan is to create a community, and maybe even several. But the idea is you can come, and how therapeutic is just a night by the fire with the hot drink and good deep conversation, like ayahuasca aside.
Oh, my smile, like it's enlivening, it's enriching, it's soul food. And every night here has been that. The journeying on ayahuasca has been profound, and as profound has been the rich connections and the sharing. And everyone's trying to find their sangha, their community, that space in which they feel seen and heard, they feel valued and celebrated. And here what's happening is not just a celebration of people, but a celebration of life, realizing that our space in humanity at the moment is facing difficulty where there's isolation, disconnection, dissociation. And these spaces here, what you're creating here, these seeds of healing and of celebration of life unfolding in each moment is beautiful and healing and rich and just, I think I used the word stupidly delicious. And it's just been such a privilege to come here.
That's a good work. That's a good word, stupidlicious. Regarding the group work, I know you're a fan of Jung, and so you might know something about the archetypes. I have noticed that in the past our groups were smaller, 10 to 15 people in the very beginning. And I noticed that when we went to 20, 25 group size, the word circles and the lessons from the word circles became richer. So it almost felt like it was enhanced, which surprised me because a lot of people were worried about larger groups because they thought it's going to be less connection because there's more people. And it went the opposite way. Do you think there is something about those like having certain amount of certain archetypes, or what do you think about that phenomena?
Yeah, what comes to mind for me there is intimacy, into me see. We can have intimacy one-on-one or in small groups, or in our group 24 people. So the intimacy is like, how willing am I to see into other, and how willing am I to allow them to see into me? So when you've got a bit bigger group here, we don't want to say too huge a group, but you go from 15 to 20 or 24, you've got more people seeing into you. You're being seen more, so the vulnerability's more. We do have these archetypes, whether it's the warrior or the wounded healer, and a lot of people that would come here would possibly be wounded healers, just like us psychotherapists, wounded healers. I think all these archetypes, they emerge in groups. An archetype, a good way to look at that is kind of like a patterning function. They pattern the space. They, create a way of things to form. And when you've got more archetypes in a space, then you've got more inclusion. You've got the capacity and let me find the word here. You've got the potential for greater emergence because you've got more included in it. So I think that can reach a critical space if it's not held well enough. It doesn't surprise me that going from 15 to 24 is yielding better results, more richness.
Yeah, it almost feels as if there's more people to mirror other people's experience.
Yeah.
Because maybe they are of a similar archetype, and then you learn through others sometimes better than you do through yourself.
That just speaks to something. In one of the ceremonies, there was someone that for me, in some of their expressions, wasn't feeling so, like I didn't feel integrity in that. And so I could have got pissed off and annoyed at that. But I used that as a mirror. So what's my relationship with my own integrity, and what spaces in my own life am I not standing in integrity, even if it's in small places? And so that person was a beautiful mirror to me to shine light into the unknown spaces in my psyche. And if we can look at everyone as our brother and sister holding a mirror to us in these group situations, then we have just far more information, more understanding, and more knowing of in our process if we take the time to do so.
Definitely, and it happened to me as well this week. There was one person that was causing negative emotion, and I did the same thing. I was like, why am I reacting to this?
Yeah.
Where am I doing something similar? And if that happens to you on a day-to-day life, if you find that some person is really triggering you and really causes a negative emotion, look into what is that they're doing that you might be doing, and it will sometimes lead to a revelation. Before starting to work at this field of psychedelics, when I was doing my soul searching and switching from engineering, I did a life coaching course, and I did it thoroughly. Actually, I did part of it in this hammock right behind us. It was years ago. Wow. I have then tried to implement that on some friends of mine. And there was a friend of mine that I practiced a coaching session with him, and I was looking for a breakthrough, and he said he was really annoyed when people were spending too much time on their phones. And we were trying to understand why. And in the end, it was about himself. He was not, it was about attention. And basically, I asked him, like, why are you annoyed by people spending so much time on their phones? Because, like, they could have been doing something better with their lives. And then he realized that he does a lot of things that take his attention from things he actually would be better use of his time. And it was a breakthrough. So I was really proud of it. And on that, my life coaching journey ended. And I never tried it again. But some of it is useful today still in my newly found line of work.
That's one of the great things about being here at La Waira, the nature, the peace, and the people. Being away from my phone, I've turned it on once during the halfway break, just to check in, tell my family, my friends, and my loved ones back home, the people that matter to me.
To cancel the search party.
To cancel the search party, I just want to say, actually, everyone matters to me, that I'm still alive. But being able to disconnect from that concrete jungle and the ways in which we doom scroll. They say if you doom scroll, you scroll until you're doomed. To be away from all of that, those distractions, and just be here in the beauty, to be like what Blaise Pascal says, and excuse the engendered language, the root of all man's miseries is his inability to sit quietly alone in an empty room. Just to be able to sit here with people and find the beauty and the peace and the simple and the subtle, hear the subtle winds that blow, see the richness of the greenery through the lenses of other people too. It is beautiful, and that in itself is just healing.
I have some notes here of what you said in one of the word circle. What is transference, counter-transference, and reenactments? Yeah.
So clinically, transference and counter-transference. Transference is when unconscious process, say for example in the client, maybe for example the therapist might remind unconsciously the client of their mother or their father. That client might then start to act in ways that are similar in the ways in which they'd act with their parents. That's then kind of projected onto the therapist, and the therapist in their own counter-transference can do a couple of things. They can give the client the same experience that the parents gave them, which is not cool, just reinforces possibly the dysfunction that was there. Or they can give a reparative experience. They can maybe, if it's the anger that's being transferred or the pain, the therapist can hold that and give them a reparative experience, like where before if anger came out and they were shut down, the therapist can hold that anger and say your anger's welcome here. And they can have a new experience that their feelings are valid, that their feelings are welcome, and they are allowed to feel. Most of us in the West, especially us men, we're taught to, take a concrete pill and harden the fuck up. That's what we're taught, and not to connect with the richness of the feelings of our inner world. So transference and countertransference can be a real space in which we hold the new experiences or reinforce the old ones if we're not alive to it. Like I know sometimes in sessions, if I'm feeling irritated by a client, I'm going, God, part of me wants to slap this client across the face and just say, wake up. And I'm going, if I catch myself, then I can go, what are the particles that are landing on me trying to communicate to me? And I can then hold that space differently and going, maybe this client's kind of, communicating to me that that this is how it's like to be them in the world. This is what it might be like for other people around. This might be the experience that they feel a lot, like that people are irritated by them. And we can give them a new experience that's reparative.
It's very valuable because it happens to me a lot as well. Just because I am this, my role here obviously as a leader, a masculine figure. Sometimes women project their trauma with men on me. Mm-hmm. And it's strange for me. I don't know how to react a lot of times because I'm like, I've never really hurt a woman in my life before, but that prototype that they have of like a sort of masculine figure might be a pretty bad one. So I generally need to learn how to invite their anger and maybe have some language around that.
Well, maybe there's some ways you're already doing that through your music when they've projected that on you, and then you open with your beautiful voice and your music, and they can see the softness, the kindness, the love that this man is holding, even though unconsciously they've been projecting this, this fear, really what it is, this fear and hurt upon you, that in some ways you may already be doing that. But to be alive, and we get alive to that process by being in our body, and if we're noticing that in that irritation or even a desire to be close to, in both ways, it's just really valuable information around what's this person trying to tell me in between their words, what's the unnamed known. That's known unconsciously but hasn't been named. Yeah,
this line of work is difficult, working with hurt people, because sometimes hurt people try to hurt people, and sometimes you're in a line of attack, but definitely ayahuasca makes it easier. So because you see the change in people, and a lot of times the change is fast enough, so by the end of the retreat they realize what I've done and they actually can ask you for forgiveness. I believe in therapy might take a little longer.
What you said yesterday in our closing circle, and this is something I really want to iterate, and I loved what you said, was that there aren't bad people. There are hurt, there are confused, there are suffering people that behave poorly and hurt others, but there aren't bad people. And I think it's really important for us to hold that when someone pulls in front of us in traffic, and we want to go, fuck you, get out of my way, that this person in their own confusion and their own pain is acting in a way that is causing it to others, but it's kind of unconscious in a lot of ways. It allows us to be more compassionate.
I'm able to do it, but really rarely. But when I can, then it feels extremely empowering. All of a sudden you're like, it's almost ego-driven. Like, look at me, look at how conscious I am. But in a way, it is the only correct reaction, because reacting to anger with anger is not going to help. It's putting more oil into the fire.
Well, there's a beauty in the flaws of being human. I notice times when I screw up with my clients, with my daughter, with my parents, with my friends, with my partners, but it also gives us the opportunity to reflect and how can we be kinder, more compassionate. we can always open our minds wider and deepen our hearts deeper. And that's something that, I really stand by. It feels like a life purpose, that there's no end to that. And that's the beautiful thing about being alive. Like what you're doing here, there's no end to what you're creating here, the lives that you can touch and heal.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So you sound like a media persona, but I don't think you are one. Do you have any YouTube channels or?
I've got one that's just starting. It's called Deep Feeling, and that's going to be being populated. I was starting to do that, but when I got the call to do ayahuasca, I was like, actually, I'm just going to hold off for that because I feel there's going to be some profound stuff there, which there has been. So it's going to change a few of my views on certain thinkings. So there's going to be a website and a YouTube channel just where I sit down and talk with people, and I'm really passionate about feelings and helping especially men, people really connect with feelings, because feelings aren't thoughts, they're felt in the body. And in the West we rush to make the meaning, bring the words to it, as opposed to be with the wave, the physicality of feelings, the sensations, the motor response, even the imaginal. Like when you're angry, there might be the enlivening energy in the body that comes up, the felt experience, and there might be the motor response, like I want to go and hit something or punch a wall. Not that that's usually a great idea. Then there might be the imaginal space, feeling like a volcano. We often bypass all of that, so I really want to help people to connect with feelings more, and also find their inner home, that space that people were speaking about when they were sharing that they found love for themselves for the first time. And maybe what they're speaking to is they found love to something greater than themselves as well. So that's the kind of space that I'm wanting to become more alive to and talk about more through a YouTube channel and a website.
Well, let's assume by the time listeners listen to that, the website is up and the channel is up. What are the channel is Deep Feelings?
Deep.feeling. That's just the YouTube channel, and then deepfeeling.nz is going to be the website. Yeah. Okay.
We'll try and add that to the show notes as well. So, Simon, it was amazing speaking to you, very fascinating. I'm extremely proud of you and anyone who does an 18-day retreats, because it is a hard work. Lots of it is beautiful, but don't be confused. It does require a lot of work, just like all good things in life. So, Simon, thank you so much for the conversation, the lessons. I'm sure people will enjoy it a lot.
Thank you, Sam. I just want to hand on heart here and just say my profound gratitude for what you've created here, the people that you've got involved, the vision, and just the beautiful healing space that's been here. 18 days is no walk in the park. It is not full of rainbows and unicorns sometimes, but it's also filled with depth and breadth and width. So I'm super grateful, and this has changed. One of my friends, I'm very close to, she said, I look really forward to seeing what rearrangement of atoms Simon comes back as. And so the rearrangement that's happened here is not just happening in this lifetime, but the lifetimes to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Guys, you have been listening to ayahuascapodcast.com. As always, your host, Sam Believ, and we've been joined today by Simon. What's your surname?
Tennant.
Simon Tennant. Please give a like to this podcast on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to this, and follow us or subscribe to us on that same platform as well. Leave us a review. It really helps us. The world deserves to know about ayahuasca, about plant medicines, about conscious use of plant medicines, and the psychedelic renaissance that's happening. Thank you for listening.
Con la vida, vida de la baila, cura con la guaira, limpia, limpia, taita, vibrando